This Week in Connecticut with Dennis House starts now.
Welcome to This Week in Connecticut. Greetings, everyone. I'm Dennis House. Straight ahead today, from new housing to remote workers to tariffs, what is the future of the Connecticut economy? Christy Pentima of the CBIA is with us. A follow-up to our interview with the owner of the Place to Be restaurants, Gina Laurie, faced a judge this past week, plus the need for new police officers across our state. Sergeant Steve Austin of Hartford Police explains. And the holidays can be stressful. Ryan McGuigan on how to manage and intervene. First up on This Week, we want to mention that this week, former New Britain Mayor Erin Stewart finally announced her plans to run for governor. We'll be sitting down with her in the coming weeks for an interview. Today, though, we are talking about the economy, and we get some insight into the changing Connecticut economic scene. With me now is the president and CEO of the Connecticut Business and Industry Association, CBIA, Christy Pentima. Chris, good to see you here in the program.
Yeah, great to be with you again.
So last time I had you on, we were talking about tariffs and how they would impact the Connecticut economy. This week we had a story on how they're even affecting pasta at some restaurants. So what is the latest on how tariffs are impacting our state?
Yeah, still a lot of uncertainty around them. Some countries are starting to get figured out with the deals with the U.S., but it's causing that instability with the businesses. Amazingly, they're still navigating through it. We continue to see growth in our manufacturing sector and our tech sectors, which are very import and export heavy. Just the past couple of weeks, though, there's been big delegations from Quebec, Mexico ambassador to the United States, and the Pakistan ambassador to the United States visiting Connecticut, because they know there's about $1.5 billion that we still import from China that probably needs to be resourced given the significant tariffs on China.
What do you mean by resourced?
Probably finding another home,
Okay.
Whether that's here in the United States, if they can find the cost comparison, or moving stuff from China to Quebec, to Mexico, to Pakistan, because these Connecticut companies are importing almost $24 billion a year from foreign countries.
Is that difficult to do?
Very challenging, very challenging. I mean, you need customer approvals, you need to find the right supply chain, you need to figure out how to deal with the trades and joint ventures that exist. So it's challenging, and it's going to take a long time, and that's why the Connecticut suppliers have to start now and start thinking about, if I'm sourcing from China, where potentially could I move it? What are some options?
Have tariffs led to any closings in our state and anything like that, or business downturns that you know of?
We just heard of a couple small businesses that do a lot of business exporting to Canada and exporting to China, primarily in the woods industry. So hardwood, finished wood, sawmills that have either temporarily or permanently closed their facilities, the two that I know of, because that market has just pretty much dried up, right? There's no transactions going on with China from Connecticut companies. There's very little transactions going on to Canada from Connecticut companies because of the amount of the export tariffs.
I have not had you on since the big Sikorsky deal was announced earlier this fall to build 99 helicopters. And they say that the trickle-down effect will hit 42 different companies across Connecticut. How big of a deal is that deal?
It's significant. It's a deal that takes place from 2029 to 2034. So it's a 5-year, $11 billion deal for almost 100 helicopters, as you mentioned. But it provides some predictability, some stability for the Sikorsky supply chain that's been rocked a little bit by the Black Hawk decision, some other decisions. So this gives them a little visibility. This allows what they call Team Hawk, which is Sikorsky and their robust supply chain, 40 specific to the King Stallion, over 300 suppliers here in Connecticut working on different Sikorsky parts, to have a path forward of what the demand looks like, but also to build up more demand by designing the next generation helicopter, also getting into the commercial industry. And this is what the Connecticut Sikorsky supply chain really need. We had their supply chain manager at our event in October, and she was really talking about, okay, now we've got a stable base with this award. Let's build on it. Let's get more demand so the supply chain and Sikorsky can grow in Connecticut.
And as you mentioned, it's not until 29 and 30. Can you use that information to sort of forecast what the impact of the economy will be then?
Well, the supply chain can certainly use it to understand, okay, what type of workforce do I need?
Sure.
What type of demand? And we can start to see that in Connecticut. Will we have a growth there from the King Stallion? No doubt about it. The real challenge in forecasting the supply chain and the economic growth in Connecticut, and also even with the tariff movements going on, is it all comes down to the workforce in Connecticut. Their demand is there, but do these businesses have the people, or will they get the people to meet that demand. And workforce continues to be a challenge. You know, we see some population growth, but it's not significant to grow the workforce. And it all comes down to affordability. Will people move to Connecticut? Will they stay in Connecticut, especially that younger generation, the next generation of workforce, when you have high housing costs, high childcare costs, high taxes, high energy costs.
And you bring up the housing. Let's talk about the housing because, you know, there's a new housing bill and there's talk that, you know, the governor on this program last week just said that he really wants to invest in housing in the cities. Where do you see that going under his?
I think it was a good bill that needed to get passed. And obviously there was great negotiations that took place between the bill he vetoed and the bill that finally got done with special session. One of the things that's overlooked in the bill is the first three sections, which is called the first-time homebuyer savings account, something that we've been advocating for at CBIA for 3 years, finally got passed in the special session. That's a significant provision. That's going to allow individuals and married couples to either put $2,500 or $5,000 away into a special bank account, and each year, tax-free, they'll be able to withdraw it tax-free. The interest grows tax-free, and they'll be able to put that towards their first home purchase or closing costs. Now, it's not going to lower the cost of housing, but it's going to make it more affordable because now they're able to invest, and it's also an employer match to that first-time homebuyer savings account. So making housing more affordable, building more houses, two things we need to do. That housing bill is going to be that spark to ignite it.
And the governor says it's important to build them in the cities. Why is that?
Because that's where our cities need it. You know, that's where they have the availability to grow. We haven't seen a lot of great growth in some of our areas, Hartford specifically, Waterbury, Torrington, because of the businesses not coming in full time, a lot of remote work or hybrid work. The state employees not being in full-time 1 day a week is really, I think, hurting Hartford quite a bit. You know, it's a big workforce there. And so if you can't get the businesses to bring people back, well, then you need the residential piece. And that's why building these houses in our cities will grow that. You see that in New Haven, you see that in Stamford, you even see that in New London with the growth of electric boat and the housing growth there. We need that in the rest of our cities.
I know the mayor of Hartford really wants the state to bring back its workers. He said, and there are, what, 6 office buildings, I believe, in Hartford that are in receivership right now because they're emptying out. The companies just aren't, you know, the restaurants are saying, where's my lunch crowd?
It's a big piece of the economy, right? And you would think the state employees would want to come back to help those cities grow, to help the economy grow, to help Connecticut's economy grow. Because when the economy grows, it helps the residents. You're able to lower taxes, whether it's property tax or income tax, like we saw in 2023 with a big income tax reduction. You're able to fund more into the pensions, which are underfunded, which goes to the state employees. So it's critical that we get those state employees back to the offices, especially for the city of Hartford that really sees it on constitutionality.
You feel the difference when you walk downtown. And most people, you know, don't go into work just once a week.
Right.
You know?
It's a real challenge.
So, you know, what can you force these companies to bring it back? You really can't, but the state, I guess, has a little bit more power. They could say, listen, from now on, we're going to require you to come in.
Yeah, the governor is negotiating with the union. The next collective bargaining will be 2026 and 2027. That's a critical piece of it. I know he wants to see the state employees come back at least a little bit more. As you mentioned, the mayor wants to see him come back a little bit more. And I think the private sector's employers, they're trying to do more. But if they see the state employees start to come back, there's going to be that push that, oh, we need to do it on the private side, too.
One last thing I want to ask you about. The governor on his program last week said that he is already hearing from companies in New York after the election of Zohran Mamdani. Have you heard anything at all about this? What kind of companies may want to move here?
Yeah, we've heard a few financial focused in firms, primarily in New York, that are easier to move. You know, not huge numbers of employees, can move very easily. We've also heard from the areas around Stamford and Lower Fairfield County that the number of people visiting houses and open houses with New York addresses grew almost 25% just in the 2 weeks leading up to that election. So there's a huge opportunity for more growth from New York City to grow not only businesses but residents.
And we talk about the remote workers too. There are some people who work for companies in New York who are living in West Hartford and Avon because they only have to go in a couple times a week, and it makes sense. So this impact could even be felt elsewhere in the state, right?
Oh, across the state, yeah, not just in Lower Fairfield County, but you see that growth right through New Haven and up to New London, and also up towards the Springfield area, you know, in Hartford and just north of Hartford. There's growth across Connecticut happening because of that New York outpouring, and we need to continue to take advantage of it. If we can lower the cost of living even a little bit more in Connecticut, we'll be that much more competitive over New York, New Jersey, even Massachusetts, and continue to grow the population.
You think at the end of the day there will be companies moving from Manhattan here out of New York?
If he puts forward the policies that he ran on, I absolutely think there will be businesses and individuals leaving New York to come to Connecticut.
Fascinating times. Christy Pentima of the CBIA. We always love having you on. We could talk forever.
Great to be with you.
Thank you. Coming up, we'll be right back with a follow-up to last week's guest on this program.